I mean, one of the things that was really important to me in creating these sequences was that Mulan is not a superhero.
Here we go. So I bit the bullet. And by bit the bullet, I mean that someone else was kind enough to share the movie with me so that I could watch it. And it wasn't great. What began as a beloved movie that released just before the turn of the century has turned into something lifeless and cold. And just overall a bland action movie. So while some people are just kind of on the side of things, some people really hate this thing. My ultimate feelings are, please don't pay for this. Like, if you really want to watch it, just wait for it to actually hit Disney Plus in December and just watch the original until then. It still absolutely holds up. If you like the 2020 Mulan, that's great. I'm glad you found something in it to enjoy. So what went wrong with the 2020 Mulan? Or what is it that fans of the original just aren't resonating with when it comes to this one? Well, there's a lot. When the live action Mulan was first announced, I was actually kind of interested. I'm not really a fan of the live action Disney remakes or the not at all live action remakes that they're trying to convince you are live action remakes, even though they are very much still animated.
It's trying to replicate real animals. Yes, this is live action.
No.
But Mulan is awesome, and when they said that they wanted to have it align a little bit more heavily with the original Chinese story, the Ballad of Mulan, I thought that there might be some kind of added value that would make the story play out differently, or at least kind of add something to the story that we might not have seen previously. Yet somehow this movie hits all the same plot points as the original 98 Mulan, while removing almost all meaning from it at the exact same time. Now I won't pretend to be any kind of expert as a Canadian who didn't consume the original Mulan story, but from my understanding, the Ballad of Mulan is something that is very important to Chinese culture. And hearing from people who grew up in China who were kids when the 98 version released, talking about how amazing it was for them to see Mulan in an animated Disney movie is awesome. Now, while I'm sure that the opinions differ across the board and many viewers found it injected too much Western ideology, there were a lot of kids in China that really enjoyed this movie. It made them feel valuable and represented. It was a movie that empowered young girls not only in China, but around the world. If you want more from this perspective, I would recommend checking out Accented Media's video. I'm really glad that I ended up coming across that video before I started filming this. So I was hoping that the live action version of the story was going to do something similar, but maybe bring in a more diverse backing of writers and creators, considering they kept mentioning that they wanted a more culturally authentic story. Something that would make it stand out on its own a bit rather than just being a shot-for-shot remake with some added songs as new content. Or, you know, just ruining the classic songs you already have. Looking at you, Lion King. Again. But sadly, that's not at all what happened. This thing somehow has 4 screenwriters and it's still just so devoid of any character and charm. Cause sure, there are differences. There's no new songs, cause there's no songs at all, which is fine. There's also no Mushu, which, okay, fine. But what was added cheapens the story and strips away so much of the meaning. But before the movie even had a chance to release, there was drama popping up. Actors defending the police against Hong Kong protesters, which led to calls for boycotts, and the Disney CFO, while not elaborating, has said that some of the backlash towards the movie, specifically certain filming locations and credits, had generated a lot of issues for them. So I'd already decided that I wasn't going to be paying for this a long time ago. And I honestly didn't even want to watch it after the bad reviews started coming out, but I figured that due to requests and the fact that this was definitely the lesser of two evils for things that people want me to watch right now, we were gonna give it a go. So the original Mulan has earned a place with the classics, and to me, I think it's actually one of the higher tier Disney films. I watched it again for the first time since I was a kid before diving into the remake, and I was shocked at how well it still stacked up, other than a few questionable things. It has great pacing, the music flows well with the movie to move us along from scene to show the passing of time and how the soldiers are developing together and becoming friends. How Mulan is learning to excel in this group in herself. It has well executed comedy, but also provides a great core meaning for kids, especially for young girls. That pacing and smooth flow is absent from the remake. A lot of the scenes just abruptly stopped and shift before you feel like you've gotten to the end of the purpose of it, and you're just kind of left wondering what the point of that scene even was. You know that really important reflection scene from the original? You know, the one with like the really big song? The song that they ended up like modifying to be the score for this one? Yeah, none of that is in here. Other than this moment where she's a really young kid and overhears her parents talking about how she has to hide a part of herself, otherwise she'll bring dishonor to the family, and then it just cuts years later. They don't have have that moment that shows her so conflicted at failing at her duties. Because in this remake, the military people show up immediately after she gets thrown out of the tea house. There's just no flow, much like this video, I'm sure. And for those who are watching this that are unfamiliar with the story of Mulan, it's essentially the story of a young girl who leaves home by night to take her father's conscripted place in the military by pretending to be a man to fight in the war he would have surely died in. She's displayed as not fitting in with the ideals of womanhood and what her expected duties are, and struggles with her personal identity. She's brave, kind, and spirited, but she has no special abilities. She leaves home knowing full well that she could die, that being exposed as a woman could be a death sentence, and she's already going into the situation with a disadvantage. She also had to face some real horrors.
And I am Yao.
I never want to see a naked man again.
Word, Mulan. But to her, these risks are worth it to save her father. The 2020 Mulan does none of that. Yes, she does take her father's place, but the story adds something that's just so wrong for this story. Within the opening scenes of this movie, we're not just shown that Mulan is a rambunctious tomboy, struggling to find her place in the village and her family. No, she's really not like the other girls. She has magic powers.
Mulan is not a superhero.
So that was a lie.
Literally within the first 3 minutes of the movie, she is running around the village pulling stunts. And considering the director Nikki Caro wanted this to be a more grounded, realistic, and culturally accurate take on the story, which is part of the reason why they opted not to include musical numbers or Mushu, there just feels like there's a disconnection there. We don't tend to break into song when we go to war. Well, we don't electric slide across walls either, Nikki, but here we are. Like, look at this tea house scene. Are you kidding me? Why would you do this? I love superheroes as much as the next person. But we have enough. You didn't need to turn Mulan into a superhero and then lie about turning Mulan into a superhero. But either way, her father tells her that these chi powers are for warriors, not women. They're for the other W. So she'll just be branded as a witch if she uses them, which this movie also has, who can turn into a bird. Or many birds.
Mulan is not a superhero.
I'm just so tired. Literally in this 50-second clip, everything she said she didn't want to do with this movie, you can see in the trailer.
So we wanted to stay off the wires as much as possible, so she wasn't flying through the air. It's the fact that the action sequences are beautiful.
Are they though?
Mostly adhering to the laws of physics and gravity.
She backflips on a horse to kick a spear. And then later she beats the baddie by kicking an arrow out of the sky into his chest.
Mulan is not a superhero.
Are you serious? Gone is the problem-solving and tactical thinking of the 98 animated movie. We have magic now! It worked for Frozen. Hell, even Frozen got that right. Oh, and she also has a sister added in this that I felt probably could have been used in an interesting way, but she'll literally just become an excuse to uphold the old traditions, which we'll get to. And then once Mulan actually gets to the military, any semblance of a personality is gone. She's got no charm, and she just becomes flat and boring. It doesn't come across as stoic determination to achieve her goal. It's just nothing. Which is weird because there's some moments early on where she's kind of funny despite some horrible dialogue, but at least it shows that she has a personality that is just gone immediately. Look, I understand why a wisecracking CGI Eddie Murphy dragon might not have worked very well in this, but the lack of characters for her to riff off that know her secret is very noticeable in this. They do keep Cricket for some comedic relief by turning him into a lucky boy, but again, he can't serve that same purpose. And beyond trying to hide that she's female, the struggle also switches from working hard to make it alongside the guys in training and figure out who she is, to just trying to conceal her special abilities. In the 98 animated movie, she has to use her determination and wit to succeed and triumphs due to her hard work and problem-solving skills. She comes to the realization that she'll never be like the other guys she's surrounded by, so she uses the talents she does have to succeed. This is shown a couple times in the movie, like sparking the avalanche instead of just shooting Shan Yu to get an edge in a hopeless situation. But the moment that really flips things for her and lets her know that she doesn't have to just be the same as the other men, that she doesn't have to rely on brute strength, is the scene where she leverages the weights to climb the pole to get the arrow. It's very similar to what they did in the first Captain America with the flag scene, and it has an emotional impact. It's not a literal superpower, but it still showed a natural ability and affinity to problem solving for Mulan that no one else thought of. It showed us both the strength she's achieved through her determination, as well as showing that she was capable based on her wit. In the 2020 Mulan, they try to display this by having characters carrying buckets of water up a mountain, and once she reveals her chi and is encouraged to show it, she just carries the buckets up the mountain like it's nothing. There was nothing to overcome. There was no problem solving. It was just like, take off the training wheels, sweetie, you can do it. Okay, there was one moment where she lined up some helmets on the side of a mountain to make it look like the enemy was being ambushed from behind, so it made them switch their attack to trigger the avalanche like in the original. So yes, there was some problem solving there, but it is one moment that came immediately after she was backflipping on a horse. The 1998 movie doesn't just empower people by showing she can adapt to being the model strong warrior. It empowers her by showing that her true strength comes from being who she is, not what others expect her to be. The internal strength she has that others don't. What began as both her failing at being the ideal woman, then failing at fitting in with the stereotypical men, ends with her succeeding by not trying to adhere to either and just shining as herself. And yes, the 2020 movie will hammer home the idea that she's just not being true to herself and she has to do that before she can truly succeed. But the weight of that meaning often feels lost because the movie does absolutely nothing of value with it. It's just a virtue. Like there's this moment right after the witch tells her that she'll never reach her full potential until she stops lying to herself, except it's literally the thing she was using to conceal the fact that she was a woman that saved her. But hey, she has to be true to herself, so she just reveals herself to everyone by going into battle as a woman. You go, Mulan. So unlike in the 98 version where she puts herself in harm's way to save everyone and ends up injured, which then ultimately results in people realizing she's a woman through an act of selflessness, in this she just kind of lets the witch manipulate her. Making Mulan a literal magic hero the way they do in this movie undermines the idea that anyone can be a hero. Obviously there are a lot of superpowered characters out there that can express that meaning. This movie just doesn't do that. It really just takes away that idea that we all have value and strengths that allow us to shine even if it's not in the most conventional of ways. And I think one of the reasons why it feels like that's lacking from this is because she just never feels like she needs anyone else's help. And I don't mean from a damsel in distress kind of way, I just mean from a get by with a little help from my friends kind of way. Even in the most OP of Chosen One stories, people have friends that help them out along the way. Overcoming things is human and something that we can all relate to. There's just not much to grab onto here. Now beyond this, there's a lot of moments in this movie that feel like they're going to cause some kind of conflict, but then they just fizzle out before anything can happen. Mandatory showers, she'll take guard duty.
Showers. You lot stink, and I need a volunteer for night guard duty.
Me! Buddy tries to make friends with her in the water and she aggressively says she doesn't want to be his friend because she wants him to go away so he doesn't see her body. No issue, they're fine the very next day. It's like it didn't even happen. Reveals her chi powers that she's been trying to conceal the entire time because she's trying to show off. It's fine. Commander's like, hell yeah, use that shit. Also, I want you to meet my daughter. So she has to hide her magic abilities for fear of being cast out as a witch. But hey, as a dude, it's fine. She's encouraged to use them. No warlocks here, I guess. And even when she does reveal herself to be a woman in the battle scene and is exiled, she just comes back immediately. And they're all like, okay.
I believe Hua Mulan.
I believe Hua Mulan. I believe Hua Mulan.
I am Spartacus.
This is a watered-down, uninspired version of a 1998 animated version of a classic tale, and it costs $200 million! The movie also has a lot of issues when it comes to dialogue and exposition. There's also some really unnecessary voiceover work, because apparently seeing things on screen isn't enough to make it make sense. I don't know.
To hide amongst them, she knew she must become one of them.
Like, yeah, dude, I'm pretty sure we're all aware of why she has to pretend to be a man. Now, as mentioned, there's a witch character in this, but she's essentially like the dark mirrored version of Mulan. And don't worry, if you didn't catch those parallels, they'll just say them out loud to you.
We are the same.
So can Mulan turn into a bird? Can she take over people's bodies? Because this shit is wild. Anyways, she was cast out because of her powers. Extremely powerful, but essentially living a life of exiled servitude. But because these magic abilities are being added in, they're not overcoming society. Not overcoming the status quo because they're being displayed as more than ordinary. It turns into an issue of them being cast out because they're witches, not wrongfully undervalued because they're women. Either way, nothing else interesting happens with the witch. She just ends up sacrificing herself to help Mulan. But nothing in this movie has led me to believe that Mulan would have even needed that help. Because I know I just said that she never gets anybody's help for anything, but this time it really just, it's a non-issue. I would have assumed that Mulan would have seen the arrow coming towards her and just kicked it right back at him, ending the movie 10 minutes earlier. And this is where everything goes completely off the walls. And by off the walls, I mean everybody's on the walls. She's flying across rooftops, and again, the Academy Award-winning ending of an arrow being tossed in the air so that she can kick it into the big baddie. It doesn't even show her landing. She's just suddenly upright. I'm so upset. Also, this sword burning, $200 million. So she saves the day, and as expected, the Emperor offers her a job. But there's even a subtle difference here. In the 98 animated version, she is offered the role as his advisor, which shows the value of her problem solving and intellect. But in the 2020 live action, she's offered a position on his guard. Not that there's anything wrong with being a valuable, strong warrior, but again, it just really cuts off the legs behind the message of Mulan, or at least what the 98 Disney movie put out there as the meaning behind Mulan. And considering this is a live action Disney adaptation, I don't think I'm wrong to try to hold them to their own standards. But of course, she turns it down and she heads home to her family. And this is when we find out that the sister has been matched off for marriage. You know, that thing that represented the old ways, that might not be the best way to do things. Too bad, kiddos, no magic powers means that you get to uphold the old traditions and do your womanly duties. And there goes any hope I had for this sister character. Now, there is a nice moment with the dad when he's like, I'm the one who should be sorry to you, but I still don't feel like that scene carried the same emotional weight as the original, where her father immediately casts aside the trophies she brings back, casting aside the traditional ideas that Mulan can only bring honor either by being the ideal woman or through these new triumphs she's achieved, and realizing that she brings honor to the family simply by being herself. And in the 2020 movie, it just cycles right back to him respecting her as a warrior.
One warrior knows another.
The animated Mulan tried to show that there is value in being yourself and that there's no reason to follow these strict traditions and status quos, whereas the 2020 just kind of opens up space for her to be an outlier. But of course, before it ends, the Emperor's soldiers come and they offer her a brand new sword, and they make one last request for her to join the Emperor's Guard. And by golly, I'm pretty sure she was gonna say yes right before the movie ended. Does someone smell a sequel? So that's Mulan, another installment in the Disney remake catalog. They took one of the most strong and interesting female characters they already had in their repertoire and made her boring. So that the end result of this movie is something with such an astronomically high budget, somehow feeling and looking so damn cheap. So if you guys have actually watched this movie, let me know what you're thinking down below. If you haven't watched it yet, there's much better things you can spend your time doing right now, and it is certainly not worth $30 or the $35 that it is in Canada. Please just save your money and just watch the original Mulan, or I don't know, Alien or something. So that's gonna do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you as always to my Patreon supporters. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm still mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.